What is art without the muse? Many of Western art's most famous works are depictions of women. But who were these women? Do they have their own stories to share with the world? Hello and welcome to ArtMuse, a podcast that aims to reshape the ways in which we interpret well-known works of art by paying dues to the women whose images have been immortalized, but whose names and stories have been wrongfully overlooked. While these women's faces are familiar to viewers around the world, their identities have been largely forgotten. Together we will explore the important lives and legacy of the female muse and appreciate these works of art from a new perspective, through the eyes of the women whose image stares back at us. Is the muse in actuality just as, if not more, important than the artists themselves? And I'm your host, Grace Anna. Hello and welcome to a very special bonus episode of ArtMuse. A few months ago, I had the pleasure of speaking with Sue Tilley, the famed model for Lucian Freud, whose portrait broke a record at auction as the most expensive painting ever sold by a living artist. But Sue has lived an exciting life outside her time with Lucian Freud, and it's an absolute honor to be able to share Sue's own reflections on her life. So without further ado, let's hear from Sue herself. Welcome to a very special episode of ArtMuse. Today we have the honor and privilege of speaking with Sue Tilley. Sue Tilley is an artist herself. She's an art teacher. She's a published author and, of course, the famed model for Lucian Freud. She is featured in 4 of Lucian Freud's portraits, one of which broke a world record for the most expensive painting ever sold at auction by a live artist. That was in 2008. Lucian Freud passed away in 2011. So we will be deep diving into the experience of what it was like to model for Lucian Freud and, of course, the subsequent craziness of that sale and how that may have changed your life. Most of your portraits are owned by some of the most powerful men in the world. So we'll deep dive into that too. But of course, we're going to look at your life at large and just some fun highlights. Sue was an integral part of the clubbing night scene in London in the 1980s with Boy George and other kind of characters from that time, and a very good friend of it's hard to put Leigh Bowery in a category, the performance artist, costume designer, spirited presence persona, Leigh Bowery. Sue has since written a biography on. So we're going to start from the beginning and just get a sense of your life told by you from your perspective, with the end goal, as we discussed, getting to know what you want us to think about when we see these portraits of you and what you want us to know about you when we see these portraits. And Sue, I'd love to give you the opportunity to introduce yourself before we dive in.
Okay, my name's Sue Tilley. I live by the sea in St Leonard's on the south coast of England, and I'll just let you ask me questions.
So we'd love to just start from the beginning and tell us a bit about your childhood. You spent some time in London in your early years. So tell us about your childhood.
So my mum and dad met at the church youth club. You know, they both lived up the road from each other and they got married. I think my dad was only 20 when they got married. And then I was conceived on their honeymoon. Well, I guess I was, because I was born 9 months, 5 days after they were married. And my dad was still only 20 when I was born. Wow. But very nice. And then my dad worked in a bank. And so he got a flat in the middle of London in Paddington, a huge flat. So my auntie and uncle, my cousins moved in as well. So it was lovely. So I had a lovely life of built-in friends. And we spent our life in the parks of London after school, and it was generally very nice. And then when I was 6, we moved to Surrey, but my auntie and uncle and cousins only moved 5 minutes away, so I was very near to them as well. And then I can't really complain I had such a nice upbringing. My parents were really nice. They used to go to church, make me go, which I didn't really like, but used to take us on outings, and we always had to go and look round museums. But where I lived in London was near museums, so I practically spent my childhood in the Science Museum because I liked all the buttons. And yeah, they were just very nice. And, you know, and I was quite naughty. They told me off a bit, but not really as much as they should have done. And then when I was 11, we moved to Harpenden near St Albans, and I went to school there, and then discovered boys, discovered messing about, discovered my love of going out and getting drunk and just generally having fun.
And you had a younger sister, was it?
Yeah, I've got a sister who's 4 years younger than me, then a brother who came a lot later who's 16 years younger than me.
Oh, wow. Okay. Yeah. And tell us about the role, because you said you went to museums with your parents. What role did art play in your childhood?
Oh, I always liked art, and I was always having drawing competitions and making my mum judge. But I was won because I was much older than my sister, so I was better than her. And then I remember when I was 11, we went on a school trip to Holland, which was the excitement. I'd never even been abroad before, so it was so exciting. And I went to the Rijksmuseum and bought the Rembrandt book and the Night Watch. I think I've read that book cover to cover 100 times. And I used to read art books all the time. And it's really weird now to think that I'm part of it. So I think, and even now, I think, oh, those women have fantastic lives, so interesting. And I think, oh my God, I'm one of them.
You are one of them. I know. Yeah.
I know. Who would have thought?
Yeah, who would have thought?
I know.
Well, yeah, who would have thought? I mean, imagine your child self looking through those Rembrandt books. You would have never known that.
I know that I'd be in all the books.
That you'd be in all the books.
It's most peculiar.
Yeah. I think I saw somewhere in an interview you had a young relationship where you were engaged to be engaged.
I was, yes. And bizarrely, I haven't seen him for how many years? How old am I? 66? 45 years. Then the other day, my sister came round and she went, look him up, go on, look him up. I go, what's the point? He's got a really boring name. No one will find him. I won't find him. Oh my God, I found him. I couldn't believe it. And he only lives half an hour. Well, he works. I'm really pleased. He's turned out nice. He's got a nice posh kitchen shop about half an hour from where I live.
Wow.
But I'm not going in there. I'm not digging up the past.
Okay.
But that was really my only proper normal boyfriend I had, really, I'd say. Because otherwise I flutter past them. I don't know what I'm up to.
Yeah, well, I found it interesting in that interview you said through that relationship could tell at an early age that, that traditional life wasn't for you.
I know. Every 5 minutes he was asking me to marry him. And I go, no. And I'd be behind my mum's back going, just say no, go on.
Yeah.
And I don't know why. It was never a conscious thought in my head. But I think deep down I knew that I didn't really want to get married and have children.
Yeah, that wasn't your path.
No, there's not. Like people, what's it called? My clock's, where the clock's going. I don't think I've got the clock. I don't mind other people's children, but I can't say I want any of my own. And I don't want anyone living in my house. I like living on my own.
Yeah, I totally understand. Well, I think so many people probably feel that way, but are in tune and in touch with themselves and kind of go blindly along the more traditional path. And I think it's quite amazing that you had that dialogue with yourself and you stayed true to yourself.
It's just, when I was young, I presumed I'd get married and have children because everyone did. And I thought, and it wasn't a conscious decision going, I'm not going to do that. It was just, most of my life is, my subconscious is much stronger than my conscious. And it just happened how I wanted it to.
Yeah, and it seems like a lot of your life is like that.
I know. Things just happen to me.
Things just happen to you.
Yeah.
Tell us a bit about art school training. You were training to be an art teacher. Did you have a painting or any specific kind of...
No. It was just, I don't even know why I went there. It was 3 complete wasted years of my life. It was so boring. The people there were really dull. And I never did any work. I don't know how I scraped through. And then I was going out with that boy, and the one who we were engaged to be engaged. Oh, I don't know why I went there. It was just painfully boring. But anyway, it didn't matter. Yeah. Because I left and went to London, and my whole life went how I wanted it to.
And you ended up in London, which we'll talk about, going into this art-filled, creative bubble. So you probably got a lot more out of it and a lot more inspiration in that afterlife. But it is interesting that you did have these beginnings in the art world with the intention of being an art teacher, but working in the arts, and many, many years later becoming an artist yourself. And it is interesting, too, the way life works. Had you become an art teacher then, how different your life would have been.
I know. I like my life just drifting along and I not know what's going to happen.
Yeah.
And if I ever make plans, they should go a bit skew with. So I'm better just leaving things up to luck.
I like that. I need to be a little bit more like that in my own life. So after university, you moved to Camden Town, and that was, well, tell us a bit about that and what brought you there.
Well, no, I moved with a friend from school to a flat in, I went to sign on and they said, you can work here. And so I ended up working in the job centre. I don't know why, but I'm just easy going. I went, that'll do. And to be honest, I worked there about I thought working in the job centre, I find myself a really good job. I never saw a good job come up, so I just stayed there. But it didn't really matter because I'd had an outside life that was more interesting,
Sure.
so I just went to work. And now I've got a pension and everything, so I can't quibble.
And you ended up working that job for, what was it? Was it 30, how many years?
Over 30 years, yeah, about 37 years. Weird.
And when did you move to the Camden Town area?
When I was about 22, I suppose. I can't remember what year that was. I'm not very good with years. Very, very early 80s, late 70s, I'd say.
And what was that experience like?
Well, I was living with my friend, and then the flat we rented wasn't good, and she was going to move into this house in Kentish Town with people she knew from college. And then she didn't want to. So I just moved instead. And to be honest, I don't think they really wanted me there.
Oh.
But then within a week, I'd ingratiated myself.
Of course you did.
Yeah. And so I made lots of good friends there. I'm still friends with them now. And then I started work at Camden Job Centre and I met my first ever gay person. And that wasn't exciting. I thought, you kind of realise that's where you belong.
Yeah.
And I'm still friends with him now. In fact, he's coming to visit in a few weeks.
How lovely.
Yeah, so first of all, I think he thought I was a bit of a country girl. But then when I moved into the flat with all the funny people, he liked it. And so, so I lived in this squat house in Kentish Town and started going out to nightclubs. And that's when all my life changed and became what I wanted it to be.
And can you paint a picture for us of that world and what life was like at that time in that area?
Yeah. Well, no one had any money. Mobile phones, of course, didn't exist. The internet didn't exist. So I think in our squat house, we had a payphone that was forever breaking. And we used to break open the box to get the money out to use it again. So everything was like word of mouth and handwritten flyers to know where to go. But you kind of generally realise that this night you go here, that night you go there. Sometimes, we even made arrangements by letter.
Oh, wow. And you kind of made your own fun.
People started club nights up.
Yeah.
And no one had any money. So it was all make, do and mends. And I remember going out in like a dress made out of an old tablecloth I'd mucked up that afternoon. She'd just go to jumble sales and tie-dye things. And sometimes I'd hand sew them and just scrabble them together and they'd last one night.
But they're so amazing. I really encourage everyone to look at some images and videos from that time. I actually did end up watching the documentary on Lee Bowery. It has amazing footage.
It does. Well, the Charles Atlas one.
Yeah. And you're of course interviewed in it.
Oh, yeah. So anyway, I was at Heaven nightclub and my friend said, this is my friend Lee. And you just take to someone, not knowing that actual meeting would change my life completely. But he was 4 years younger than me and had a very jolly, cheery face. And he wasn't like freaky then. He didn't dress up. He dressed up like everyone else, but not in his own special way.
Sure, yeah.
And then we just became friends, as you do.
So it felt kind of like an instant, like a click or an instant connection.
Yeah. And then the thing, then afterwards, we went to this other club and he saw me on the floor snogging someone who I told people was my brother. So he thought I was a really mischievous woman snogging my own brother in public. It wasn't my brother at all, it was just my friend. But
oh, that's good.
Did me well, telling lies.
But that's what Lee seemed to be all about, kind of pushing boundaries, shocking people. Lee has his own life and story. What was it like watching him transform into this artist and persona?
It was exciting. It was exciting because really, he wasn't weird at all. He was just like a perfectly normal person, have a normal conversation with, and all these weirdness was planned. It wasn't like you just, some people I know are just like that. I can't describe it, and they can do it without thinking about it, but he used to plan all his mischief beforehand. And so it was marvellous. And then remember the first time he was on television, oh my goodness, the excitement. And then the first time he was on the cover of a magazine, it was like a free magazine called Lamb, Australian, but they sold in London. He went round picking them all up. So they used to have them out on street corners. I think he collected about 200 and decorated his flat with it.
And would you help him in this planning, his different kind of...
Sometimes I would, but really, generally, he knew I was quite lazy and I couldn't have the devotion. And I didn't like staying up all night doing this, that and the other. But I did have a car sometimes, so I'd drive him around. I made papier-mâché pointy hats for him, bits and bobs, and I'd help him out, but not like other people did. It was like, they loved doing it, but it wasn't really my cup of tea.
And did he ever make any costumes for you to wear?
Loads.
Tell us about them. So what are some of your favorite ones?
Oh, I had these dresses I used to wear to work. Hilarious. I had a catalogue where you used to order things weekly, and you pay weekly for them, like you buy a new dress and pay them weekly or something. And then he wanted a new washing machine. He couldn't afford it, so he bought the washing machine out of my catalogue, and I paid it off. And then to pay me back, he made me loads of clothes. Oh. So I'd go around, he'd just throw me something, go, oh, just try this on. Then I'd have to stand on the table while he got the hem right, which another thing got on my nerves because, I'm happy. I'll go, oh, it's all right. He goes, no, it's not. You've got to have it perfect.
Perfectionist.
And so I was and I've still got some of those clothes
now. Oh, I'd love to see them at some point. That's so special.
Well,
yeah.
You never know.
And so tell us a bit about this. You're by night hanging with Lee Bowery, Boy George, going to these nightclubs and pushing the social...
Drinking heavily.
And then by day, you maintained your job at the job center. And did it feel like a double life? And what was that?
A bit, but they crossed over a bit because some of the people from the nightclubs and that used to come and sign on. So I'd see them there and that. And then... a lot of people at the job centre like drinking and going out as well.
Oh, that's fun.
Yeah.
Yeah, so there was crossover.
Oh, yeah.
I think this time of your life is extremely fascinating. And I think there was a trip to New York. Can you tell us a bit about that?
Oh, I've been to New York loads of times, but the first time I went was with Lee. And my whole ambition in life, I had two ambitions in life, to go to New York and go to heaven on a Saturday. And Lee helped me get them both.
Aww.
And so we went, so excited. He didn't even go, he came the day after me, but I went on a flight with various other designers, Judy Blame, all these fantastic people. And we bought a 3-litre bottle of Smirnoff Blue in the duty free, which we drank on the plane. In those days, you could drink and smoke on planes. So we were drinking and smoking. But anyway, and we went to New York and we had just such the best time. It was everything I wanted it to be. I couldn't believe it, that there was actual things in the road with smoke coming out of them.
Yeah, that's still...
the water things. I was going, oh my goodness. And getting on the tube from the airport and their adverts for the Cockroach Motel, you can check in, but you can't check out. But then the first couple of nights, we kept falling asleep because we had jet lag, but we didn't really realise. So we were falling asleep at 9 o'clock. We get dressed to go out, then just pass out, then wake up at 4 a.m, go to a diner for breakfast. But after a couple of days, we managed to stay up and go out and have a wonderful time.
And did you go to Limelight? I think I saw
I went to Limelight. Lee had a fashion show there.
Oh, that's amazing.
We went to Area.
That's amazing.
We went everywhere.
We were going to deep dive into now meeting Lucian Freud. So it was through Lee Bowery. And before we actually get into your experience with Lucian Freud, I'm curious to hear your thoughts on Lucian's portraits of Lee, because of course, Lee was sitting for him prior to you sitting for him. And I find the portraits are such a stark comparison, stark difference from the Lee Bowery of the clubs and of the nightlife, who was often, you know, dressed in these extravagant outfits from head to toe. Sometimes his whole face was covered. And the portraits by Lucian Freud, for those who haven't seen them, are Lee in the nude, and they feel very vulnerable. They feel just like a very, very different side of Lee. So I'm curious just to hear your thoughts on those portraits versus the Lee you knew, and the Lee of that nightlife.
Well, because I think Lucian thought that Lee'd want to be painted dressed. And so I think he was quite surprised when Lee came and just stripped his clothes off. Because to be honest, most of the time Lee just wandered around the flat in his pants. You know, putting all that stuff on was such a nuisance that he really liked at home, just wearing these rather grubby Calvin Klein pants that were a bit baggy and a bit chewing gum grey, as they call it. So it was a joy for him to be naked. But if you can look at his work and his clothes and how he looked, you can see that being naked changed his style and the outfits he did.
Interesting.
Because he was with his body the whole time, so he could think about corseting it and using his body as his fashions rather than clothes, if you see what I mean.
Oh, that's so interesting. So the experience of sitting for Lucian, that's really informed his costume.
So it gives you really time to think about your body.
I'm sure, yeah. Wow. Oh, that's really fascinating. And do you think the portraits kind of got at a side of Lee that perhaps, or do you think they capture really Lee's spirit?
Oh, completely, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and the hilarity of him and that. But they're sad as well because all that time he had AIDS and no one knew except me. And so the last one where he's standing up on that plinth is when he was beginning to get ill. I mean, he wasn't really ill before, but that's when he was getting ill. And there's a picture of Nicola in a little cubby hole right up on the wall sitting. And that's when Lee was dying and she knew. So I always find that picture really interesting because it's like you can see her crying, kind of.
And for those of you who might not know, Nicola was Lee's assistant, but also, did they marry? Wife? Yeah.
Yeah, it was a funny business.
Yeah, I wanted to, if you feel comfortable with it, talk about Lee's diagnosis with AIDS and what that experience was like. How long was he ill for? Because if those portraits probably spanned, and it began also when your first portrait with Lucian, Lee was still alive for the first one or two that you sat for. Yeah.
3.
The first 3, okay, yeah.
But I think he came round to, I'm useless at dates, I can't remember when it was. But he rang me up and goes, I've got to come round. I went, well, I'm going out. He goes, no, you've got to stay and I'm coming round. That's a bit funny. Then he came round and showed me a letter from the hospital. So he got a letter, but he'd been diagnosed 2 years previously, but he'd never gone to find the result. So he'd had it for 2 years without knowing.
Wow. And
his main worry was he'd never have sex again. And that was and we just sat there crying and go, oh my God, this is, don't know what to do.
Yeah.
But after a while, when he was all right and didn't really get ill, we just kind of joke about him, but say really sick, horrible things.
So how long after you receiving that news and getting that letter would you say up until he passed away? Was that also a few?
Yeah, 2 or 3 years.
It's okay.
Yeah, beginning he wasn't ill, but then suddenly he did start getting ill, but he died very quickly. He died about 7-8 weeks after he got ill. So it was horrible. But if he'd lived probably 6 months longer, he'd probably still be alive now.
Because the treatment started to come out.
Yeah.
And he passed away on New Year's Eve.
Had to do something special, didn't he?
And if I remember correctly, you were the one that eventually took him to the hospital. Is that correct? And
yeah. Well, he knew he was going. He says, will you take me? So I had to drive and take him. And it was so horrible when we walked in. It was like, in those days, it was just, I was talking about this with someone yesterday, about when they used to put notes through your door, more or less, saying everyone's going to die. They were from the government. It was petrifying.
Yeah.
And so it was so horrible. The atmosphere was horrible. And, because they didn't really treat it properly. They didn't know how to treat it properly. Oh, and it was so tragic and just so, they were making their best, but it was, and we just sat there just shaking, going, didn't know what to do really.
Yeah, I can't imagine.
I'm not very good at me emotions and talking about things like that. I think that's why he liked me, though, because I just laugh at him.
But it was Lee was among, I'm sure, many friends that did you know others that had passed away at that time?
Our social life was more or less funerals, to be honest. I mean, I had a flatmate who used to be in a pop group, and he got it, and that was going through that was awful because he couldn't admit he had it, and I had to tell his parents. But Lee was going, so it's good practice. It's good practice for you. When I die, you'll know what to do. And he came with me for the funeral, and we just sat there and just held my hand the whole time. It was so upsetting. Because although the funeral was upsetting, having him there knowing that as well, that no one else knew, was double upsetting.
Right, because Lee kind of kept it from, you were one of the only people, I guess, Nicola, and eventually found out.
No, he didn't tell. Yeah, he didn't. Till he went to hospital, I was the only one that knew.
Oh. What was that like?
It was like a big, especially for me, it's hard to keep a secret, but I did. And I used to tease him. We used to say terrible things to each other. Just tease each other about it and all this. Because just get through it by humour, I think, was the way.
Yeah, I understand that.
The actual, when he was in hospital, that was a very intense period of weirdness. Like, he was saying to me things like, find me a gun. And I'm going, I don't know where to find guns. And it was really awful.
How long did he spend in the hospital?
Only about 7 weeks. Yeah, that's about. And it was Christmas, and his sister and dad were coming. His mum had died 6 months previously, which was all an upset. Yeah. But at the same time, he said, I'm glad she dies, because then she won't know that I'm going to die. And then, so dad and his sister were coming over for Christmas, and he hadn't even told them or anything. And then I had to organise a hotel for their Christmas dinner. I had to go to IKEA and buy all the stuff, furniture for them to see. He was so caring about them, wanted to have a good time. And then finally he goes, I'm going to have to tell them, aren't I? I went, yeah, you are. So we had to get loads and loads of change so he could ring Australia from the hospital phone box. So it was all very stressful when they came.
And if they came on Christmas of that year, they were there then when Lee passed?
Yeah. Well, the sister wasn't, because sister and her boyfriend went on a tour of Europe, a driving holiday around Europe for some bizarre reason. But I didn't think they thought he'd die so quick.
Yeah.
And then there was a note on the world radio or something. They put a note out looking for her because, of course, they didn't have mobile phones, saying, "Can you come back?" I don't know if she heard it or not. But other people heard it, and that's the first time they thought something was up.
Yeah, wow. So she did come back eventually, I'm guessing.
She did get back, but he was died by the time she got back.
His dad was there still?
His dad was there, yeah. The poor man, because his wife had died 6 months previous. It was horrible, terrible, really.
It's the kind of pain you can't really imagine. Yeah. Tell us a bit about the experience of writing your biography on Lee Bowery. Aside from describing his legacy and honoring his legacy, do you think it was therapeutic in a way for you in your processing?
Yeah, it was very enjoyable. Yeah, because I'd never wanted to write a book. I didn't think I could write a book. Someone just asked me, see, this is my life. Someone just said, will you write a book? I went, oh, all right then, okay. How can I do this? But I did it, and I only took 2 weeks off work. I did it after work and at weekends.
Yeah.
And I had a nice computer. So I had a computer more than most people had. So I had one quite early. So I taught myself to use that. And I went round and interviewed people. And I put a few titles down of chapters and that. But then as I got information, they changed. But I found it easy with the world of cutting and pasting. And then the publisher was just down the end of my road. So I'd run up and down the road with my manuscripts to give them and them to edit it.
Oh, and how long did it take you to write the book? Because I mean, that's amazing that you did it while you continued to work your job.
4 or 5 months. I tried to write over about 2,000 words a day.
Wow, that's very impressive.
But it was very enjoyable. Just sort of came easy.
And I'm sure, I mean, you can speak more to this too, but Lee's death must have been a massive change in your life, and I guess a way to still feel connected with him.
Yeah. See, my main worry was, this is how vacuous I am, when I get some clothes, because he used to make all my clothes for me. I went, oh, they don't have nice clothes in the shops in my size, but then they started getting them, so it was all right.
So tell us now about Lucian Freud. You had started modeling for him before Lee's passing and continued to model for at least one painting after Lee's passing. So I'd be curious at some point to hear if that before and after, especially since Lee had introduced you, if you kind of felt Lee's absence in that last painting.
Not really.
You were kind of doing your own thing.
Well, it was good to gossip with him, you know, because he'd tell me lies about what he'd done around Lucian's, and then I'd ask Lucian and find out he'd been lying to me. So that was quite funny. And he'd send me little notes sometimes, leave them there for me. I got over it.
Yeah.
You know, you have to.
Yeah. Yeah, I think your use of humor and your resilience is quite remarkable.
Yeah. I'm a tough old bird, deep down.
Yeah. So tell us about Lucian, what that experience was like. I know we'd love to hear more about him as well and your honest thoughts.
Well, Lee put the fear of God into me about him, saying he's really petrifying. He wasn't, I suppose he was, but I didn't really bother. But he was quite amusing. I found him very amusing. I used to say he should be on telly, be a national treasure.
Really?
But at the same time, you know, I can't describe how fascinating it was. That, you know, people who just do what they want to do and think what they're doing is right, even though it's really wrong, like really rude and horrible. They think they were perfectly in the right. He used to tell me stories. I go, well, yeah, yes, I'm very proud of myself. I go,
oh, gosh.
Right. It's used to, like, he let his dog go into Baker's and lick the bread. And then when a woman told him off, he kicked her.
Oh.
And he happily told me he kicked her.
Oh. Yeah, I mean, I feel like there have been things since his passing that have, and I know you had a very different relationship with him, of course, than some of these other women, but there have been some more disturbing.
Yeah, there was no romance. Oh,
no. Yeah. But there have been other, other stories like that kind of come out. Was it Celia Paul who has recently written a book?
Yeah, I've got a book, but I haven't read it.
I haven't read it. Yeah, I haven't read it yet either. But I don't think it paints a very pretty picture of him.
Yeah.
I think it's important that you had your own experience with him as well.
I think it made 100 times easier that there was no romance, or he didn't fancy me and I didn't fancy him, you know, because there wasn't that weirdness.
Yeah, absolutely. No, absolutely. I totally understand.
Yeah.
What was it like when you first met him? Because if I'm remembering correctly or piecing together some of your interviews, well, we know that Lee introduced you to Lucian, but as you said in some of those interviews, Lee wanted Lucian to paint your portrait, but he orchestrated it, so it seemed like Lucian's own idea.
Lucian, yeah.
But what was it like when you met him? Did he come to Taboo or one of the clubs?
No, some other club he came to, so I didn't really meet him. I just went, oh, hi.
Okay.
But then I was invited out for lunch, so I had to go for lunch. But luckily there was about 8 other people there. But it was really weird that I could see him all the time, his eyes just looking me up and down.
Okay.
And obviously I passed the interview.
So sort of during that lunch that's this idea to paint you. Was
he's like this, staring at me, looking at me like that.
Wow, yeah, interesting.
Yeah, but he liked to try and fit in with you. And so he knew what I liked, so he'd talk about that. And then when he invited my mum and dad to visit, because he was fascinated to see what my mum and dad were like.
Oh, how did they get along?
All right, but then he knew my dad liked sport, so he just kept coming out with ridiculous sporting facts to kind of entertain my dad and make him feel at home.
Oh, that's so funny. I love that. Yeah, he seemed like a real character. And I think you said that he liked gossiping during your sessions.
Oh, yeah.
And there was a story with Judy Garland he used to tell you.
She had a very, very limp handshake.
So the first work that you posed for him is called Evening in the Studio. And that was, well, if you want to tell us a bit about that, I believe that one you were having to pose on the floor.
Yeah, it was me, Nicola, and Lee to start with. So Lee was on the bed, Nicola was in a chair doing some sewing, and I was on the floor. It was so uncomfortable. After about 2 days, I thought, I can't do this. It's just a nightmare. Then I had a word with myself and said, yes, you can. You can do it. So do it. So I did. But then Lee got a job acting in a play in Scotland, and Lucian was so angry because he wasn't there to his every whim to be there. He turned Lee into his dog. So the person on the bed was Lucian's dog rather than Lee.
And was that anecdote what got you in trouble with Lucian many years later?
It was, yes. Because I didn't realise, but I was in New York with Nicola for the opening of Taboo the musical.
Right. Oh, I want to hear about that too.
Yes, and she very happily told me that Lucian wasn't talking to me because of what I'd said on the Tate Gallery podcast thing that people go around and have headphones. And I said, oh yeah, Lucian was thrilled Lee wasn't there, so he didn't have to pay the dog. But it was just a joke. What did it matter? But he took offence. But I think what he used to do, he used to take offence with people on purpose, because he didn't really like a lot of people in his life because it interrupted his work. And so he thought of reasons to get rid of people so they wouldn't be his friend anymore. He'd have to worry about them. But it was funny because I didn't even know.
Yeah, I think that's the funny part.
I've been sent to Coventry, yeah.
You didn't even notice.
Because I didn't hardly ever, it wasn't like we rung up every day.
Sure.
Once in a blue moon he might ring me. So I hadn't realised.
But I think the part where I, as an outsider, where I got annoyed was that he didn't call when the sale of that painting happened.
I know. That was rude. No one did. Not even the people who owned it. I thought some of them might send me a bunch of flowers. Nothing. But I can't quibble, because in many other ways I did very, very well out of it. It changed my life. But the fact, I must have upped his income by a lot, mustn't I, really?
I mean, I guess he was a well-known artist already, but you turned him into a household name. And I think it was quite rude that he didn't ring you up and say thank you.
But there's no point wondering about such things, is there? And then but I did see him just not that long before he died, and he spoke to me and he was all right. So that was okay.
Oh, yeah. What was that like?
Yeah, I was at a party and I think I was a bit freaked out because I think my dad had died a few days earlier. So I was a bit
overwhelmed.
And then he went, oh, he had his little voice. Hello, Susan. How are you? Like that. I went, oh, because it was quite a fancy party and I was a bit nervous anyway. I was going, oh, yeah, I'm all right, thank you, yeah.
So it was kind of short and sweet.
Yeah, but it's nice that I spoke to him.
Sure, yeah, absolutely. So a little bit of closure.
Yeah.
So let's return quickly to the experience of sitting. I'm curious, in benefit supervisor resting and sleeping, if you actually did sleep a bit during those.
I frequently went to sleep.
You did? Okay.
Yeah, but because like when you're not really tired, you go to sleep, you have funny dreams.
Yeah.
So it was a bit weird. And then sometimes I used to stand up because I thought he'd said to me, take a break. But he hadn't. I dreamt it. Because I dream I was in the room and he suddenly go, oh, take a break, Susan. What are you doing? You said, no, I didn't. But then he said, have a break anyway. So it worked quite well.
But I think that registers a bit in the paintings, and that's what makes them kind of magical, is that you do feel that you are in a way dreaming, and you're curious as to what are you dreaming about, and
thinking, like, I've said this a million times, but you don't often have the opportunity to do nothing and just think. Because if you're at home, you think, oh, I better do the washing up, I better tidy that up, I better do this. But there, I had nothing to do and there's nothing I could do except think. So that was nice.
And how long were each session that you would sit there for him?
About 7:30 in the morning to about 3:30 in the afternoon. But sometimes we go out for lunch, that'd be 2 hours. Or even lunch in the house would be an hour. And just little breaks.
Was he a good cook?
Brilliant, but very simple, very Elizabeth David.
Okay.
He didn't really go for, didn't like carbohydrates, and just bought the best quality food and cooked it very simply, which I think is the best.
Were some of your sessions at night as well?
Yeah. Each picture is either a night picture or a day picture. You can't mix them up because of the light. So the first picture was a night picture. That was about 7 o'clock to about 1 in the morning. Then the last 3 were day pictures, so it was the same times.
And would you do those night sittings after work? You'd come over that night?
Yeah, then I'd go to work the next morning, yeah. And then some nights I'd be working in a nightclub.
Oh, my God.
I was a very hard-working person.
What was the experience of being in the nude like?
When I was in the room with him, it was like nothing. But if I get up and go to the toilet, even though there was no one else in the house, I put a blanket around me or sheet just to go toilet.
But it's something I guess you got used to.
Yeah. Lee made me practice. He came around my house and made me strip off.
Would Lee ever come during your sessions?
Oh, no, because it was different time, it'd be pointless. But it was nice because before I'd started, I'd read a book. Well, I looked at a book of all Lucian's paintings. Then gradually over time, I got to meet all those people.
Oh, really?
Yes, that was interesting.
Oh, that is really interesting. How do you feel he captured you, and how do you feel about the way he captured you?
Well, I could have looked a little bit prettier, but I'm not that pretty. And it's what I am. And to be honest, people think I look better in real life, which is a bit of a blessing.
But do you think he captured your spirit in a way, or
what, lying around being lazy? Yeah. No, he didn't. No, because I look quite serious and I'm not really serious.
And maybe that's one of the things to have people think about when they see your portraits is you look serious, but you're actually...
I was probably thinking about what I'm having for tea and what I'm going to buy in the shops on the way home.
I think I know the answer to this, but which is your favorite portrait?
The famous one, the benefits.
The famous one.
Yeah,
okay,
that's the best. I look the best in that one. I look comfy.
Yeah, I wanted to speak a little bit about how you feel about your portrait sort of changing the narrative of the female body and body positivity.
See, I'm not a great one for it. You are what you are, mate, and if you want, that's what you are. Make do with it. You know, I'm not a, what's the word, an advocate.
Yeah, okay, sure, yeah.
I don't like to stand up for body, but if I am, I am. But it's not like a path I've gone down to go, oh, look at me, I'm fat, but I look fantastic. It's just part of me and I don't want to bang on about it, if you know what I mean. It's just,
sure.
I am what I am. My own special creation.
Absolutely.
Everyone's different, aren't they? And it's better if everyone all looked the same. It'd be boring.
Has anyone ever approached you about your portraits being inspiring for them in that sense?
Well, they say it on Instagram and that, they say it, but if they mean it or not, I don't know. But people always say, oh, you've given me such a positivity in my life by being you. So if I have, good. But it's not that wasn't my aim to set out and go, oh, I'll show everyone being fat's great.
Sure.
I mean, I know it's great. If you are fat, you're fat, and don't get upset about it. Just live with it. And make the best of yourself as well. Like, I mean, I've always bright colours. That's not like I hide in the corner. You know, make yourself look nice and feel nice. And if you are fat, don't worry about it.
Yeah, enjoy life is really...
Yeah. Yeah, because eating's one of the most gorgeous things in life.
It is very true. I actually saw a few weeks ago in New York, I was on the subway and I saw someone with a tattoo of benefits supervisor sleeping.
I know, people have sent me it. I'm just like, that's weird.
Well, I kind of chased her down and I said, oh, that's Sue Tilley. And she was like, oh my God, you know who this is? But I got the sense that you were an inspiration for her.
Oh, well, that's nice. I'm glad to be an accidental inspiration, but I don't go out of my way to be one, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I think that in and of itself is inspiring. It's just like you're unapologetically you. And if that inspires, great. If it doesn't, that's okay too.
If you don't like it, like I remember they put it in the magazine at work, my picture, because they could, you know, someone from the job centre had suddenly got all this drama. And someone wrote, I was horrified to get on my desk and see that repulsive picture on it. I thought, you're a saddo, aren't you? You don't understand fun.
I mean, that's certainly true. I think it says more about that person.
Exactly.
So you were still at the job center when these paintings started going on auction. And I guess now let's kind of get into that a little bit. It was in 2008, benefits supervisor sleeping, sold at auction. I think it was $36.1 million. And you have said that that has forever changed your life. So can you walk us through that day and the craziness?
Well, what happened was I was at work. It was about 2 months before I was at work, and because it was 4 stories where I worked, and it was in Soho at the time. And someone went, the Evening Standard here to see you. And I thought it was about work. So I went down and they went, oh, yeah, your picture's going to sell. It's going to be... And I was going, what? Why has no one told me this? How peculiar. What are you on about? But they seemed quite serious. They go, we've got a photographer coming. Can you come outside? So I went, I'll go upstairs and put some lipstick on. So I went up to my desk. I went on Google. Nothing there. It's a bit weird. Is it candid camera?
Oh, gosh, yeah.
And then I went downstairs, had the picture taken and what. Then the next day, it just went mental.
Wow.
It was just so bizarre. I was going to a funeral. So I had the day off work because the funeral was at lunchtime. And then my phone kept ringing all these people. I don't know who they were. They wanted to come and interview me.
Oh, my goodness.
And no one to help me because Christie's finally phoned me and said it was going. I went, well, I don't know what to do. They went, oh, it's up to you. I've never known people more unhelpful, to be honest.
I also think it's worth pointing out that they didn't invite you to the auction itself.
Oh, no. And at one point, someone said they'd pay for me to go. And they said, no, you can't come. Isn't that nice? Yeah. It was because there was a second picture that went. So I was making a television program at the time and they wanted to film it. They said, no, you can't come. No.
Jeez, yeah.
Nice. But anyway, I really think Christie's, the whole art world, to be honest, is corrupt and disgusting, if you ask me.
Yeah, I know.
People don't buy art because they love it. It's just for money. And and I was going, well, how do you know it's going to be the most expensive painting in the world? I'm going to look ridiculous if it's not. They go, oh, no, it will be. Well, how do they know? You know what I mean? Because it's all on the fiddle and the hoo-ha.
Yeah.
So anyway, that's my opinion of Christie's.
No, I understand. I think there is definitely a shadow side of the art world and why one work is selling for 36 million and why not another.
I know, why? How?
And how do they know? And I guess, for those of you who might not know, that portrait was bought by Roman Abramovich, who owned the Chelsea football team and, is one of the most powerful, influential people in the world. And yeah, it's like thinking why he bought the portrait and what he might be doing with it. I think you said maybe it's, in storage or it was an investment, which is quite sad.
But originally it was marvellous. It was in someone's front room in St John's Wood, in their television room, actually, because I went round to see it and I was going, it's nice. I'm just lying watching telly, what I love.
So did that person originally buy it from Lucian Freud?
Yeah.
But probably for a much more reasonable.
Yeah. But they were part of the banking thing and they lost some money, I think, when the bank crashed, so they had to sell it.
Well, boy, did they make it back.
They did well.
They did well. Benefit supervisor resting, I think, sold for even more than.
Even more, I know. So yeah, it's another ugly arc.
Yeah, it's quite in a way jarring that these paintings are now owned by these very powerful men who we don't know what they're doing with the painting. You certainly haven't, I guess, been invited to see the painting or been included, but yet they kind of own these intimate pictures of you.
But it's weird. I think the models are treated like complete rubbish because I know this, but their National Gallery recently had a big exhibition of Lucian and they phoned up. They wanted to do a little interview, a film for something. Then they rang back and went, sorry, they don't want us to interview any of the models at all. I
mean, that's part of where my podcast mission is bringing the spotlight back to the model, because sure, the artist has vision, sure, the artist has craftsmanship, but I think ignoring the model's presence and importance in integral part of the artwork itself is a real oversight and it's really unfair.
I only get invited to an opening if I ask.
Yeah, that's really shocking.
There was a big exhibition in Paris at the Pompidou. I wasn't even invited to the opening. Then I rang up, I said, well, can I come? Never been treated like more piece of shit in my life. It's like, okay. I don't expect everyone to be falling and over me and going, oh, well, that's wonderful, please come. Maybe a little bit of politeness would be nice.
Absolutely. What do you think as a model and now also as an artist, what do you think the model brings to a piece of work?
Oh, it's all about them.
That's how I feel.
They're the most important thing in the picture. Because whatever you say, whether you don't think it's just a person, it's not. It's still that person. Unless it is a random person you've made up. But if you're using someone...
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
You're using them and they're part of the process, aren't they?
I mean, I completely agree with you. And I think doing this project has only reinforced that for me. There's something about these male artists profiting off of these images of women that I feel frustrates me. And I feel that bringing the spotlight back to those women feels important. And there are some female artists who I'm going to look at who use themselves as a muse. It actually brings me to you because it seems like, well, I'd love to hear about your experience as an artist now. If you do paint yourself, how that experience is versus, having someone else paint you.
See, I don't really consider myself a proper artist. I'm more a jobbing artist. I don't have to paint every day or anything, but every now and then, if someone asks me, I'll turn something, I'll do something. And I paint myself a lot because it's handy because I'm here. That's why Lucian, I think, had so many self-portraits, because if a model didn't turn up, he'd be there. And so he always had something to work on. But yeah, I've got very funny thoughts about being an artist. I don't like calling myself one, really. Because I can draw a bit. I can paint better than I can draw. And I can make a picture. But I'm never going to change the world. I'm not aiming to be in, the Tate Gallery or anything. I just like doing it for my own pleasure and other people's pleasure. It's just not a hobby. I suppose it is really a hobby, but
Hmm.
sometimes luckily I get paid for it. But
It brings you joy.
I mean, I got my lovely job with Fendi through my art. That was lovely.
Yeah, can you tell us a bit about that?
That was another thing out of the blue that happened, like through a friend who loved my drawings and said, I thought it was a joke. Do you want to do some drawings for Fendi? I went, oh, yeah. I was just moved here. I was in my spare bedroom, surrounded by boxes. And then he was in the offices in Fendi, taking photos of things, send to me. I draw them, send them back with a photo on my phone. Then they're all over their fashions.
And you made drawings of objects and they...
Drawings, yeah. And then they put them on fashions and things like that. But even they made some little metal charms of them and things like that.
Oh.
It was like, I couldn't believe it when I went there, all the things they'd made. It was thrilling.
Do you own some of them? Yeah. Okay, good.
I do, yeah. But I'm not really a high fashion person. But my friend who got me the job only lives around the corner. And quite often I do commissions for him because he's a big fan of my art.
Aww. And it is nice that while, of course, Christie's treated you the way they did and of course,
yeah, but other people so nice,
but then you have gotten all these opportunities and these...
Exactly. So that's why I'm never bitter or cross or anything, because I think I did very well out of it.
Yeah, well, you deserve it. Yeah.
I mean, the last couple of days I've been inundated with, when you're a bit over it, because people just going on and on and on. I'm going, please just stop.
Sure. Yeah, I know you've had endless opportunities. Have you modeled for other artists? Well, I know you just had your portrait taken.
Well, I did with my dear friend, Rui Miguel Leteo Ferreira, who got me back on my art career, because it's all a funny story. I thought he accidentally bumped into me, but it was all prearranged, apparently. But anyway, he decided he wanted to do these paintings with me, and it took him 10 years of knowing me to get the exhibition. So just a couple of months ago, there was a big exhibition in London of all these paintings he'd done of me and him. And some of them are based on, because he's very, very clever and a brilliant artist. And some are based slightly on Lucian pictures. And in the pictures, he, the artist, is naked and I'm dressed.
Oh, interesting.
Which is like a twist on...
Yeah.
I mean, they're fantastic pictures.
I'll have to look them up.
Oh, yeah, they're on my Instagram. They're amazing. So that was that. And then there's a man, just an Irish man, who's just done my picture. He came to my house and took a photograph of me after we'd meditated and stared into each other's eyes. That's not really my thing, but I went along with it. He's trying to sell it for £1 million because I said I'd never model naked for less than £1 million. So he's going to try and sell this picture for £1 million and give me the £1 million so I'll model naked for him.
Oh my God.
So that's quite, but lots of me thinking, oh, it's a bit naff, is it right? But then I'm thinking, excuse me, like Damien Hirst, that skull business with the diamonds they bought it themselves, the whole art world's like trickster and trickery. So I'm seeing it in my mind. It's concept art.
It is concept art.
Then I met an artist yesterday. He's going to paint my picture.
Wow. So it continues.
Yeah.
And this was something I was curious to hear about. Were you in a film or some films after this?
Yeah, but only like in passing. Only an extra. Yeah, because I can't act. I can't remember words. So just as well. But the book about Lee, supposedly, well, this has been going on for donkey's years, that it's being made into a film. And every now and then something happens and it doesn't happen. But anyway, it's still going on, slowly but surely. But who knows?
I think that would make a fantastic film and it would share his story.
See, all I'm interested in is the premiere.
Which you better be invited to.
I better be. Imagine if I wasn't. I'd be outside crying. No, I wouldn't, because I'm too lazy. I couldn't be bothered. Well, save the bother of getting ready.
But I think it would make... an excellent film, and certainly Lee's story. I'm grateful that I got to know Lee's story through my research of you as well. Yeah. And, that documentary is just the footage and Lee's spirit is really one of a kind. So I really hope it's...
I know. I forget. And then when I see him on the telly or a clip, I go, oh, you were so marvellous.
Yeah, truly. So, and you as well. And your friendship seems so special. And so I really do hope that comes to fruition and that they do it well.
Yeah, they better.
So tell us a bit before we wrap up about your life now in Hastings.
I moved to Hastings on a whim, bizarrely. But it worked out nice. I've got a lovely flat. I can see the blue sky. I can go in. Last weekend, I was swimming in the sea. And it's a very, very creative place here. Everyone's always doing something. If you want to go to an art show, you go 2 a night. They're everywhere. And a lot of people here, they've moved from London, they've got a bit of spare money, and so they can indulge it into their passions, you know. And everyone's creative. I'm not a great one for live music, but there's tons of live music and loads of things going on here.
Oh.
People laugh. These people I don't really know came down yesterday. Okay, do you know everyone here? Because everywhere I go, hi, hello, but everyone's like it. 'Cause everyone's very friendly.
Well, that's lovely. And are you still teaching your art classes?
No, I was meant to do one last week, but no one booked up, so it was a bit expensive. But maybe next summer I'll be doing them again at the old rectory.
So back in person.
Yeah, but see, I like a little job every now and then, but because I've got 2 pensions, I don't have to work too hard. I mean, it's always nice but really I do it because I like it. So I like my art class, and I hope it works out. But because this one was outdoors, it's in the weather here, it's very tricky to work it out.
Sure. So I guess we'll finish by returning to that question of what do you want us to know about you when we see those portraits by Lucian Freud, and what do you want us to think of? She
suffered for her art. Just think, I don't know, just be pleased for me that that just out of the blue, these opportunities come my way that I don't, I've got no ambition really, but the things that have happened to me, what I couldn't even think would happen because they're so bizarre. So, it's not many people think I want to be on a record-breaking painting, is it? It's not generally a thing one would think I want to happen, but then it did. And then things I wanted to happen when I was young that I never did anything about just sort of came to pass when I was older, just like designing for a fashion house. I mean, when I was young, that's wanted to be a fashion designer, and then just came my way. Writing a book came my way. Everything just appears.
And when we look at these portraits of you by Lucian Freud, you in that moment would have never known that there was going to be these record-breaking sales.
No, never. And then I haven't mentioned it, one of my favourite things was being in Boy Jules' musical Taboo.
Oh, yeah. Can we quickly talk about that?
Imagine someone playing me on Broadway. Who would have thought? That's another thing that wouldn't cross your mind that might happen, is it?
You're a character in a Broadway musical.
I know. That was marvellous. I thoroughly enjoyed every moment of that because it was so exciting. I was going, oh. Especially, my interest in New York and my thrill of New York being a magical place.
Did you get to meet the actress that played you?
Oh, yeah, I'm still Facebook friends with her. But she only played me for a couple of days in Broadway because she was about 8 months pregnant. So I sort of keep in touch with her.
Well, is there anything else about your life that you'd want to share, add?
I think there's enough there.
Hopefully, we tell your story and capture your humor and your gregarious spirit as we share your story, and that comes through.
Yeah, chatty, that's what I am.
Well, you're a very uniquely warm and open person, so I appreciate you. But I'm very, very grateful, and it's such a fun opportunity to be able to get your experience firsthand.
Oh, it's a pleasure. It's no trouble. Second one I've done this week.
Good for you.
Thank you so much for listening to this very special episode of ArtMuse. I hope you enjoyed hearing about Sue's immense life from Sue herself. Be sure to listen to ArtMuse's full episode on Sue Tilley, available on all streaming platforms. This brings the conclusion of Season 1 of ArtMuse. Thank you so much to each and every one of you for listening and supporting our first season. I want to give a special thanks to Erin Greenhouse at Kula Production Company for editing each of this season's episodes so beautifully and thoughtfully, and for her continued guidance in ArtMuse's journey. Stay tuned as I continue to share the stories of the women behind some of the world's most important works of art in Season 2 of ArtMuse. Until then, bye for now.